I hadn't anticipated our marriage reaching this point. For a long time, I felt we had a unique connection, one that few could maintain for so long. However, on that particular evening, as we dined together, Emily placed her fork down, took a deep breath, and delivered words that struck me like a blow. Michael, it's hard for me to express this, but I no longer desire intimacy with you. I was initially taken aback, thinking she might be joking, but her demeanor was serious, almost detached. I attempted to laugh off the situation to alleviate the tension, yet her expression remained unchanged, as if she had rehearsed those words repeatedly. "What do you mean, Emily? What are you trying to tell me?" I asked, struggling to comprehend her message. She folded her arms and averted her gaze, refraining from direct eye contact. "It's not personal. I no longer feel that way. I'm drained, understand, the routine, work, everything. It's not about you, it's about me." At that instant, a wave of bewilderment and rejection swept over me. Why did she say that? It's not related to me. We were married, we'd been together for years. How could she make such a significant decision without consulting me first? I attempted to remain composed. "I understand that perhaps you might be exhausted or overwhelmed, but isn't this something we can tackle jointly? Couldn't we take a break, go on a trip, try something new? All we need is communication about it." But she shook her head, seeming rather dismissive. "Michael, a trip won't resolve this. I truly don't want this anymore. I believe you should acknowledge my feelings." That statement struck me once more. Acknowledge your feelings? What about mine? My wife, the woman I had lived with, was essentially telling me that there was no longer any space for me in a crucial aspect of our relationship. I chose not to escalate it into an argument, so I decided to approach it peacefully. "Emily, please clarify for me. What's happening? Did I do something wrong? Did I stop doing something you required?" She sighed, this time with impatience. "Michael," she said, "I've already explained that it's not about you. You see, people change. It's not a problem that needs to be blown out of proportion." The composure I was trying to maintain started to falter. "Not a problem. Emily, as our spouse, this is significant for us as a couple. How can I accept this without attempting to grasp the underlying truth?" she retorted sharply, her voice growing cold. "I simply don't feel like it anymore. That's all there is to it. If you can't accept that, then that's your issue." Rising from my seat at the table, my heart pounding and stomach nodding, I didn't wish to argue or lose control, but her words, as if this mattered little, made me feel insignificant, as if my emotions held no importance. I moved towards the bedroom, trying to maintain clarity in my thoughts. I had been convinced that marital issues could be resolved through dialogue and empathy, so I decided to persist rather than give up. Perhaps she was grappling with something she couldn't articulate, some factor causing her withdrawal. Over the ensuing days, I made every effort to rekindle our connection with Emily. I surprised her with elaborate dinners, bouquets of flowers, and even arranged a weekend retreat at a spa she frequently mentioned admiring. However, these gestures seemed ineffective. She politely acknowledged my efforts with a strained smile before returning to her phone or isolating herself on the couch with television shows. I began observing other changes. Emily, who was once warm and attentive, now appeared distant, as if lost in another realm. She started spending more time engrossed in her phone than engaging in conversation. Her responses to my queries were brief, almost evasive, and she consistently steered our discussions away. It felt as though everything else held greater importance than I did. One evening, I chose to discuss the matter once more, saying, "Emily, you mentioned it wasn't about me, but there seems to be a shift between us. Could you clarify what's going on?" She sighed and showed signs of exasperation by rolling her eyes. "Michael, this has been addressed already. I simply require some distance." "Distance for both of us?" I questioned, my tone revealing irritation. "Not exactly," she replied, appearing worn out. I merely, I merely want things to feel less heavy. Why do you persist in bringing this up?" "Because I value you, Emily. Because I care about us." "I can't simply dismiss the fact that you're growing distant," I explained, attempting to maintain composure. She remained silent, instead focusing on her phone and her actions, effectively concluding the discussion. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a hollow void consumed me. What other options were there? I wasn't asking for something unreasonable. I merely desired a return to our past dynamics, to be partners once more, companions. Over time, it seemed as though Emily had become detached from our marriage. As days slipped by, I couldn't shake the feeling that she had withdrawn emotionally. I began contemplating the events unfolding, including aspects I had neglected for years. Emily leaned heavily on me financially, and since our marriage's inception, I strove to be a reliable partner in every sense. However, her pursuit of personal growth, which she consistently cited, appeared inconsequential in retrospect. I found myself doubting whether she valued me as a person or merely my resources. This notion troubled me, yet I clung to the hope that it wasn't true. I held on to the belief that if I afforded her more time, she would recognize my affection. Yet, with each passing day, she seemed increasingly distant and uninterested. In that moment, I determined a change was necessary. If Emily no longer viewed me as her partner, I couldn't continue solely as a provider. I decided that if she refused to communicate her emotions, I wouldn't shoulder the burden of our marriage alone. Following our unfortunate talk, I realized it was time for a new approach. If the issue was monotony or routine, perhaps I could disrupt the cycle and introduce novelty into our relationship. I'd often heard that maintaining passion is crucial in long-term marriages, so I suspected that might be the missing piece. I began exploring ways to rekindle the flame. Admittedly, I wasn't daring when it came to this, but I was ready to take any steps needed to regain Emily's interest. The following week, I visited a specialized store for couples. It was discreet, yet my hands grew clammy as I entered. The shop assistant was cordial and guided me in selecting several trendy items for couples looking to escape a routine. I purchased various toys, seductive lingerie, massage oils, and a game touted as a playful way to rekindle intimacy. Upon returning home, I concealed the purchases to maintain the surprise. I meticulously prepared everything, lit candles, played soft music, and adorned the bedroom with rose petals, knowing she found it romantic. When Emily arrived from work, I invited her to dinner, which I had personally cooked. It was a modest meal, but filled with heart. She appeared taken aback by the effort. "Wow, Michael, what's happening? Are you trying to charm me with this dinner?" She joked with a smile that didn't fully reach her eyes. "No, I just wanted us to have a memorable evening. You deserve it. We deserve it." Despite her distraction, checking her phone during the meal, I persisted. Once done, I invited her upstairs. "I've got something special," I mentioned, holding her hand. Her eyebrows arched, evidently doubtful. Upon entering the bedroom, her gaze swept over the prepared setting. For the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of interest in her eyes, but it soon vanished. "This is lovely, Michael, yet I've already informed you I'm not up for this. Michael, let's not hurry things. I simply want us to reconnect. How about we commence with a massage? No stress, just tranquility." She sighed, though she assented. I fetched the massage oil and commenced soothing her shoulders. At first, she seemed serene, but later, she started checking her watch and fiddling with her phone as if restless. "Everything all right?" I inquired, striving to maintain a composed tone. "Indeed, it's just, I must get up early tomorrow. I find it difficult to unwind under such circumstances." It seemed no matter what I attempted, she always found an explanation. Each night, once more, she faced away from me in bed, slipping into slumber. For hours I remained awake, scrutinizing the ceiling, searching for where I'd misstepped. Over the ensuing days, I endeavored to adjust my tactics. I began focusing on self-care, investing in new garments, enhancing my wardrobe, and frequenting the gym more regularly. It wasn't solely to impress Emily, it was also to rejuvenate my self-assurance. When she recognized this change, she remarked, "You seem to be taking better care of yourself lately. Is there a specific reason?" My answer was affirmative. "I want to feel proud of myself. I also wish for you to see me as the man you wed." She merely shrugged in response. "You're already quite presentable just as you are. There's no need for all this alteration." Her words sapped my spirits, yet I persisted. I proposed we partake in shared activities, like dancing or watching daring films to stir the mood. Once more, she rejected my proposal, using reasons such as, "I'm too exhausted," or "I'm not mentally prepared for that at the moment." One evening, I opted to utilize one of the games I had purchased. It was straightforward, consisting of questions and tasks designed to strengthen relationships between couples. I attempted to make it entertaining, but her response was deeply disappointing. "Michael, this is so ridiculous. We don't require this. It's not about needing it, Emily. It's about trying to have fun and reconnect." She sighed and rose from her seat. "Listen, I understand your efforts, but I've already informed you that I'm not in the right state. You're pressing for something that won't transpire." Her words struck me harshly. "Won't happen? Have I reached a point where intimacy is no longer an option in our marriage? Michael, I am at a loss for words. It seems you anticipate something from me that I can't provide at this moment. But why, Emily? Why can't you? If something is causing you distress or driving a wedge between us, could you please share it with me?" She shook her head and departed, leaving behind the toys and games I had purchased. I felt both humiliated and frustrated. Why was I being treated this way? It wasn't as though I were demanding something unreasonable. All I desired was for our marriage to thrive once more, to find happiness again. However, at that moment, I began to suspect that perhaps the issue wasn't me. Maybe the cause of this was far deeper than I had initially thought. After that night, when Emily left me with all my unsuccessful attempts, something inside me shifted. I found it hard to look at myself in the mirror without feeling a combination of humiliation and frustration. It seemed as though every attempt I made to salvage our marriage only served to push her further away, making me feel like I was the only one still invested. In the days that followed, I retreated into solitude, closely observing her. I ceased my efforts to please her, abandoned planning surprises, and relinquished any hope of reconnecting. In silence, I pondered over the situation unfolding before me. What was once perceived as love now appeared hollow. It seemed like living with someone unfamiliar who no longer recognized my true self, but merely valued my resources. At that moment, a persistent pattern became evident, which I had neglected for too long. Whenever Emily requested something, be it money, help, or costly presents, she mastered the art of being affectionate and considerate. Yet, once her desires were fulfilled, she would transform into a distant, indifferent figure, treating me as if I were nothing but a necessary tool in her life. Flashbacks of her compliments surfaced. "You're such a giving man, Michael. I don't know how I could manage without you." Words that previously swelled my chest with pride now felt manipulative. The sentiment wasn't sincere appreciation. It was a means to bind me to the notion that she relied on me. However, as I delved deeper, I questioned whether her affection was genuine or if I was merely a facilitator of her comfortable lifestyle. After much contemplation, I concluded it was necessary to bring an end to this situation. I couldn't bear the embarrassment of maintaining a connection that shouldn't be hard in a marriage. Moreover, I could no longer tolerate being treated like a cash machine. It was high time to acknowledge the reality, however harsh it might be. That night, I waited for Emily to return home and found myself in the living room. Summoning her for a discussion, I noticed her wariness when she descended the stairs and saw me sitting there with a grave demeanor. "What's the matter, Michael?" she queried, folding her arms. "We've discussed this topic repeatedly," she added. "Indeed, Emily, we've had numerous discussions about this without progress. However, today I wish to address the issue sincerely, without evasion." She sighed and settled on the other couch, seeming to brace herself for an unwelcome message. "For the past few weeks, I've been making efforts to save our relationship and figure out our issues. What I've come to understand, however, is that I've been doing this alone. You no longer seem to be invested." "That's not accurate, Michael. I do care, but not in the way you desire." "Is that so? Then elucidate your feelings for me. Emily, clarify how you care because, as far as I can see, it appears that you're only present due to convenience. Because I take on all the responsibilities handling finances, paying bills, maintaining the household, and providing the lifestyle we enjoy. However, when it comes to being a partner, you've shut me out entirely." Her eyes widened, clearly taken aback by my strong words. "You're overstating, Michael. Not wanting intimacy doesn't equate to lack of concern for you. This situation is more complex than you imagine. Can you clarify it for me? Understand my position, as you've been acting as if I'm a stranger in your life. There's been some silence while you avoid looking at me. What I've said is, Michael, I've altered. Things aren't the way they used to be. Yes, you too have changed, and so have I. Today, I've come to understand that I'm weary, Emily weary of being solely responsible for supporting you. So I'll state it directly. From this point onwards, things will shift. When you ask what I mean by change, let me clarify. I won't be funding your expenses, your shopping sprees, or any of your indulgences financially anymore. If you don't wish to embody the role of a partner in every sense, then I too will not play the role of the provider as you expect. In future, it's every individual for themselves. You seem surprised. Are you joking? No, Emily, I'm serious. And you know quite well that you have the capacity to manage on your own. You always did. For as long as I was taking care of everything, it was simpler to bear all the burden. This is preposterous, Michael. Are you penalizing me because I don't wish to engage sexually with you? What kind of man does that? No, Emily, this isn't punishment. It's a response. I've spent decades trying to sustain this marriage, believing we shared something unique. But now I realize that to you, I'm just an income source and a comfort blanket. And I won't tolerate that anymore. She gazed at me wordlessly, with a blend of fury and disbelief in her eyes. And what should I do instead? Leave everything behind and take up some menial job? Lower my dignity? I expect you to stand up for your life, Emily. That's all. I've stood up for mine for years. Now it's your turn. If you no longer view me as a partner, then I won't continue to make sacrifices for someone who doesn't appreciate me." She angrily rose, flinging her arms in the air. "You are incredible, Michael. Unbelievable. Following our past experiences, is this how you're treating me, as if I'm replaceable? As if my efforts don't matter?" "No, Emily. I'm simply reciprocating the way you've been treating me for quite some time now. You have a choice here. Either commit to this marriage wholeheartedly and behave as a partner should, or we part ways. I no longer wish to make sacrifices for someone who doesn't value me." She didn't respond. Instead, she stormed out of the room, slamming the bedroom door shut. I remained there, experiencing a blend of relief and sadness. Relief from expressing my truth and sadness because I knew that discussion might signal the end of our marriage. For the first time in a long while, though, I felt liberated, free from guilt, free from the urge to appease someone who no longer cared for me. In that instant, I decided it was high time to prioritize myself. Since that conversation, Emily and I never shared the same connection as before. Despite harboring a small glimmer of hope that our discussion could spark a will to save our marriage within her, I wasn't surprised by the drastic change in her behavior. Instead, our already tense relationship worsened significantly. In the ensuing days, Emily barely communicated with me and spent most of her time either secluded in the bedroom or fixated on her phone, treating my presence as a nuisance. Conversely, I gradually detached myself completely. I saw no reason to persist any longer. For the first time in years, I acknowledged that I was no longer in pain. The torment and suffering that once plagued me now seemed like confirmation of what I had instinctively sensed. Our marriage had effectively disintegrated before our conversation. I stopped caring about her responses, ceased inquiring about her day, abandoned attempts to please her, and refused any efforts at connection. It wasn't driven by resentment or vengeance. It was simply a gradual detachment. I'd been expending all my efforts on preserving something that appeared to matter solely to me. For years, I'd single-handedly shouldered the family bills, only for them to be shared between us subsequently. Unsurprisingly, Emily found this change difficult to accept. Initially, she attempted to dispute, alleging my actions were tactless and unjust. However, upon recognizing my resolute stance, she started leaving the house more frequently. She mentioned needing space at her parents' place, but I sensed she was preparing to depart. A month post our decisive talk, Emily summoned me to the living room and, in a frosty voice, declared, "I believe we should part ways." I merely nodded. There was no point in further discussion. "Very well," I replied evenly. "When are you planning to leave?" Her response indicated surprise. Maybe she anticipated me pleading for her to remain or attempting to alter her mindset. But at that instant, I had come to terms with the realization that our marriage was coming to an end. She mentioned she'd visit her parents this weekend, having previously packed some items. Her voice sounded distant. I offered help with luggage if needed, maintaining my composure. On Saturday, I observed Emily departing with her suitcases. She spoke little, and I didn't feel the need for a lengthy farewell. I merely wished her luck, and she exited without a glance back. As her car turned the corner, a significant burden seemed to disappear from my shoulders. For the first time in years, the house was quiet, not an oppressive silence, but a soothing, almost liberating one. Gradually, I adjusted to a new daily rhythm. In Emily's absence, I rediscovered hobbies and pastimes I had neglected due to our marriage. I resumed cooking for myself again, something I found pleasure in but had neglected. I returned to activities that brought me joy, such as playing guitar and reading books that had accumulated dust on the shelves. Initially, solitude, something I once dreaded, proved beneficial. It eliminated arguments, requests, and aggravations. All that remained was me, my sanctuary, and tranquility. Reports indicated Emily had returned to live with her parents and secured a job for self-sustainment. Some whispered she harbored regrets, yearned for the security we shared. Yet she never sought contact, nor did I feel compelled to uncover more. Our chapter closed, and I held no animosity. This experience taught me that solitude isn't synonymous with misery. Instead, it could be a chance to restructure one's life and appreciate the smallest joys. Now, I live harmoniously. I have my dwelling, liberty, and primarily, self-worth. My union with Emily served as an education, undeniably tough, yet essential. Today, I can confidently assert that the most loving gesture toward oneself is relinquishing what no longer benefits you.